thrilled when Johnson & Johnson's Group Worldwide Chair, Sandra Peterson, agreed to come sit down and share a glimpse into how their 130 plus, I think I heard 134 years the other day, year-old company is continuing to drive digital health solutions forward. Sitting down with her is one of today's leading journalist, David Kirkpatrick, from Techonomy's founder, host, and CEO. So let's welcome them both to the stage.
Thank you so much. I'm David Kirkpatrick, and Sandy Peterson oversees 100,000 people at Johnson & Johnson and runs a very large percentage of that company, pretty much everything outside of R&D for pharma stuff, right?
And commercial pharma, yep.
And what most people don't really realize is just how big and impactful Johnson & Johnson is. You know, we all have their products all over our homes, but I was thinking it might be useful for Sandy to just start out telling us how we should think about this company and what it does.
Okay, so thank you, David, and it's great to be here. So as you heard from the introduction, J&J has been around for about 135 years. We actually started out solving one of the biggest problems of surgery, which is people were dying from infections. So, you know, many, many years ago, that's how we started. And in the 134 years that we've been in business, we've had to reinvent ourselves multiple times. But what most people don't know about J&J is that we are one of the largest, most successful pharmaceutical companies in the world. We are one of the largest, most broad-based and successful medical device companies in the world, and we're in every operating room anywhere around the globe. And we also, which is what most people know us for, is we're a very large, successful consumer products company. So we have these three very large connected businesses that are part of who we are. But I think the other thing that most people don't understand about us as well is why it's great to be here to talk about this and why does J&J show up at CES, is we're not only a science company, but we're using technology to fundamentally change how people are cared for around the world and how health and wellness happens for people at the end of the day, but also helps the healthcare systems, the doctors and the nurses do their jobs better. So we are a science and technology company.
I think it'd be worth digging down on that a little bit, you know, because I know technology is increasingly intertwined with literally everything you do. And it seems like one of the more enlightened things that you guys have been doing in recent years is really recognizing this mantra that I firmly believe that every company is a technology company, and seeing that in yourself and proceeding accordingly. So talk a little bit about, you know, how technology's use and digital tools in particular span across your businesses, because you have the thing that's so amazing about you guys, you go all the way from the consumer into the heart of the healthcare ecosystem and then literally around the world.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is it's not about widgets, apps, gadgets, and I think that's where there's a misnomer about the role of technology in healthcare, but in many other businesses. So I'll give you three really simple examples. So a lot of people say, well, what's the relevance of technology in pharmaceuticals? You know, we're not going to have all these cool digital apps, and it really isn't relevant. It doesn't make a difference. We do some of that for adherence reasons, but the reality is the massive breakthroughs that we and others have been able to make in the last 10 years about the science of disease, whether it's oncology, immunology, infectious disease, and the microbiome. We would not be able to do that kind of work and get those kinds of breakthroughs without the computational power that exists today, without visual image processing, without machine learning. So our R&D organizations are a combination of biologists, statisticians, and scientists and physicians, and tons of people who are deep experts in technology, and we deploy technology to learn about these diseases and create new solutions, whether it's CRISPR technology, and I mean, I could go through a long list of things. It's highly relevant. It's an enablement to really have huge breakthroughs in solving diseases in the pharmaceutical business. So that's one example. And I think most people don't understand the role of technology in pharmaceuticals. In our world of surgery, and how people get access to surgery, we are completely reimagining what a surgery looks like. And you know, there are 7.5 billion people in the world, maybe 8, I don't know, people don't quite know the number. Of those 7.5 billion people, 5.5 billion of them have no access to surgical care, none. So that's a terrible thing. And as J&J, we believe that our mission in life is to enable people to get well and stay well. And so we can use technology now to do many, many different things to reimagine how surgery happens. How does a physician get trained? We now have ways of training physicians like airplane pilots get trained, which is a very different way of thinking about training surgeons. We now have ways of optimizing and improving the process of what happens in an OR, like in racetracks. You know, it's a highly automated, optimized pit process where there's steps that are tracked and managed. Those aren't widgets or other things like that, but it actually fundamentally changes the surgical process. Yes, we use robots. Yes, we do lots of other things. But equally importantly, it does two other things. We help people before they show up for surgery to be better prepared for them, because we use tools that are enabled by technology to prepare them with their care providers. We also, at the back end of the process, we help them as well. So when you leave a surgical procedure, in the old days, you were groggy. They gave you a couple pieces of paper and said, follow these things and good luck and come call me if you have a problem. We now are able to work with those people after surgery and track and monitor them and encourage them and make sure they're doing the things that they need to do to get well as quickly as possible. And last but not least, we use 3D printing. So 3D printing is and we just made another big announcement on Monday. We have lots of relationships with the key 3D printers. You know, we made an announcement about a further investment we've made in a very forward-thinking 3D printing company where we can now print products, whether they're bespoke or they're in smaller lots, to actually, for implants, for instruments, for a variety of different things in the surgical suite. So in devices, it's everything across the board, reimagining how surgeries happen around the world.
The 3D printing element presumably would be especially important in extending the healthcare capabilities to literally the whole planet and addressing issues like that astonishing number of people who don't really have access to what we think of as our normal prerogative of availability of medical, surgery, et cetera.
Right.
So you can print things in the most remote places of the world and have state-of-the-art tools?
Yeah, and they're printed for the type of anatomy of that human being, right? We are all very different.
Yeah.
And then obviously we all know about the changes that are happening in the consumer world and how consumers are changing how they engage with brands and products. And you will see, and we're very proud we won an award this week. But we are doing a lot of work, for example, in democratizing dermatology. Last year, we were here talking about light therapy, taking it out of the derm's office and putting it in the hands of consumers. We were at the forefront of doing that. We're continuing to build that platform. And we are also taking skin diagnostics out of the doctor's office and giving it to consumers so they can actually track and manage small things and big things, whether it's acne, pores, those things. But obviously, early detection of melanoma is a huge issue.
And specifically, USA Today gave you an award for this Neutrogena product service app. Explain what that is exactly.
Yeah, so what it is, it's called Neutrogena Skin 360, and it's quite inexpensive. It's a $50 thing that you can put on your phone, and it has an app associated with it, and it is the exact same technology that's used in a dermatologist's office to do a diagnosis of your skin, which is frequently when you go, it's expensive, right? You do this diagnosis, and it will tell you a lot about your pores, your wrinkles, acne, and then it will give you advice about, okay, these are the things that you should do to improve your skin health.
So it's like a scanner that attaches to your phone,
yes,
more or less?
Yes, it's a scanner that attaches to your phone, and you can then track it and monitor it over time. And it will give you advice about different kinds of regimens of what to do. So that's phase one of it. But as I mentioned, it also, because we have the core technology and we know all the science, it can also help do early detection of you may have an issue. We all know that skin cancer is a huge problem. You may have an issue. Go see your dermatologist. Most people don't.
It will give you that alert.
It'll give you that alert.
It's not going to tell you you have cancer.
No, which of course you can't do that.
Can't do that. That would have to be FDA approved.
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah, but it can give you and encourage you to go because it may have detected something.
The thing. There's so many things you've already mentioned that we could pursue. One is that it seems like so much of what you're doing is changing the relationship of the patient, the individual, the consumer, and the doctor or the healthcare professional at really every phase. What J&J is doing, what all of digital transformation of healthcare is doing, but it seems like at J&J you're very focused on many, many stages of that relationship.
Well, I think that's the great advantage of who we are because we are so broad-based. We understand consumers and how they act and respond to things, and we've been understanding that for many, many years. We understand what happens in a hospital through all of the work that we do in our medical device business, and we clearly understand the science of disease and disease progression in our pharmaceutical business, and we have incredible expertise and depth there. But you got to look at the whole thing, and I think the thing that you all have probably heard many times over the last couple of days, consumers, I mean, everybody's a person. Sometimes they're a consumer, sometimes they're a patient. We always talk about that. The reality is how the system of healthcare delivery was created in the last century is really awful. I mean, it's archaic. And many other things in people's lives are not like that. And so what we're trying to do is take all of our knowledge and expertise and enable people to take care of themselves better, because at the end of the day, our mission is to enable people to be well, stay well, and get well. And so we can use technology to enable that. And like many other industries, it's happened in.
One of the things as a technology journalist, you know, I've been struck by just the degree to which progress in health is increasingly becoming one of, if not the most exciting thing that technology is going to enable in society broadly. But then I would say there's two aspects of that, both of which you've touched on, but I would just invite you to pursue either one. Is on the one hand, digital technology and technological application in health is going to vastly expand access to care globally. On the other hand, it seems like, and maybe this is what I'd really love you to address, we are sort of poised on the threshold of a new level of understanding of the human being, which is really going to let us be much healthier and just understand the mysteries of the human body in a way that we haven't up to now. Is that the right way to be thinking of it?
That's a pretty bold statement, but it is the right way to think about it. So I think one of the other things that we've learned a ton about is that you need to understand what's an intrinsic motivator of a person. And I think what we're learning is it's not just the chemistry in your body that impacts your health. It's your mental and emotional state that also has an impact on your health.
Right.
And so we take a very holistic view of the person. We also, because we feel very responsible about this, we do not believe you should cut out the healthcare professional in this process. We are enabling them and the person to take better care of themselves. We keep them in the mix. And I think that's the huge difference from some other companies that kind of go, do the classic, I'm going to blow up healthcare. Many people have tried to do that, and it's probably not a very responsible thing to do. But what we do know a lot. We never will know enough about the human body. Yeah. So I'm not suggesting that, in the next 5 years we'll know everything. We've learned a lot. But we've also learned a lot about how do you get somebody to decide that they are going to take care of themselves? I mean, the classic, you're not supposed to smoke, you're supposed to get exercise, you're supposed to sleep, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Adhering to your medication, such a big issue.
People get told this stuff and they don't do it. Well, why don't they do it? There's things about that person that's a barrier to them doing it. And
yeah.
we have the other thing that's part of J&J is we have lots of expertise about behavioral science. And that's a discipline that's changed a lot also in the last 20 years. So if you can understand what's going on with the person and what matters to them, and connect that to how you engage with them in a very different way, that's what makes a difference. The problem with technology in and of itself, and this is where lots and lots of tech companies have made huge mistakes trying to be in this field, is the classic, well, here's the answer, let me just give you the information. And those things don't work because you don't understand enough about the person, and you also don't understand about all the things that are interconnected to that person, whether it's the person themselves, their caregiver, their family member, all of that stuff is intertwined.
You've referred several times in one way or another to the blower-uppers.
Yes.
There is not a big tech company that does not believe that it has the potential to have a giant impact in healthcare. In general, they haven't done nearly as much as they have talked about it over an extended period of decades. How do you think, though, and now certainly Google in particular is making major, major investments in a number of areas. How do you think of J&J's relationship to those companies? Are they partners? Are they competitors? I mean, you are unique, and this is something I should have mentioned before. J&J's market cap is almost $400 billion. it's pretty much the only company in the world that is valued in an analogous way to Facebook, Google, Amazon, Microsoft. Sometimes ExxonMobil is up there. But so you really are in their league.
Right.
How do you think about your relation to them?
So the way we work with every single one of them, because each of them have specific technologies that are valuable and helpful to us. So we have relationships with all the big guys. We have relationships with mid-market tech companies. We acquire technology companies when it makes sense for us to do it. We have a phenomenal technology organization. So our view
You've been hiring people from Silicon Valley.
Well, we have a lot of people on our team that come from all the big tech players. I mean, you know, and so the way we think about it is, it's not an or. We don't believe they'll quote unquote blow up healthcare, but we believe that we need to work with them when it makes sense, because we can all succeed in a better way. And by the way, human beings around the globe can succeed and be healthier if we do this together. It's not an or. So that's how we think about it. Now, there's some places, you know, we have a great relationship with Google. We work with them on lots of different things. I could go down every single tech company, and we have lots of things that we do with all of them. And they're very different things because they can add value as an enabling technology to what we're trying to get accomplished.
So it's really a co-opetition, you know, in the classic sense.
Absolutely.
One of the things where you guys have a lot of work is in the operating room arena.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about what you're doing in the operating room.
So I mentioned it a little bit, but you know, one of the interesting things about what we know about operating rooms is you know, we have always been at the forefront of all of the major technology advancements in instrumentation and navigation systems to enable surgeons to do a better job in the operating room. But one of the things that we also now know is, first of all, training enough surgeons to be able to do those complicated procedures is getting really hard. And we used to bring people into rooms and train them on cadavers. But now we can do it in lots of different ways around the globe. And there's a shortage of surgeons, particularly outside of the developed world. So we can actually train these surgeons and give them, you know, technology-enabled assistance while they're actually doing the surgeries. I mean, it's not that different than if, you know, pilots today have to go through hours and hours of simulated training before they're allowed to get in an airplane. We actually do the same thing with surgeons now.
So you're saying you're as excited about virtual reality as Mark Zuckerberg?
I'm very excited about it in a very different way than he's excited about it. How about if I say that? Because I actually have a really good use case where it will make a big difference in the quality and the standardization of surgeries. So one of the big issues in surgery is variability. So we can now deploy technology to enable all surgeons to actually be able to perform that procedure at a certain level of consistency and standardization. The other big thing is there are a lot of people in that room. If any of you have ever been in a surgery, there are lots of people who've got lots of jobs to do. And the variability of how they get those jobs done also causes variability in the outcome of the procedure. And so we now know what is the standard protocol and how all those people should interact. There's sort of like a checklist, just like when you're in a pit in a racetrack. We recently acquired a company that figured out how to automate that process and digitally enable it so that we can now deploy that in all operating rooms around the globe. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The other thing that's pretty cool is, you know, surgeries always used to happen in big old-fashioned hospitals. Surgeries now happen in surgery centers, in small locations where you don't need all that infrastructure. The only way you can do that is deploying a lot of this technology into those settings to enable them to have access to all that information that they need.
Another interesting investment you've made is in Grail, which is a fascinating company, only for the amount they've raised, 900 plus million, sorry. That would be really a large amount.
Wow.
But they've raised, I think maybe now at this point, over $1 billion. They're certainly going to end up raising over $1 billion, and you've led their most recent big round, I think.
Yes. With all the tech companies interested.
Tech companies and a number of your competitors.
And a number of our competitors.
What is that going to do for you?
Well, I think it's an example of we're trying to learn much better at a sub-micro level. This gets highly technical, so I'm not going to go there. But you know, we're actually trying to learn a lot more about, can you detect in the system, the fluids in the system, before something becomes cancerous. So there are markers before some of your cells start flipping over and start replicating and become cancerous. The purpose of Grail is they've got some interest, and this is where massive computational power and visual image processing, machine learning is critical to do this work. So they have a thesis that they think they can figure out how to do this so that we can detect cancers before you ever find malignant cells. So it's a moonshot. It's a very cool thing. We don't know if it's going to work, but we all said, let's go see it. It's a great thesis. If it works, it will really change the trajectory of cancers in the world.
That's a pretty big task.
Yeah.
I'm happy you're working on that. Final question, and it is really amazing that a 130-year-old company would have a $400 billion market cap. I'm really interested in ethical business, and I just picked up a book the other day. This is a true story. I opened the book. The very first page of the introduction of the book, the first company it mentions was Johnson & Johnson because of your credo.
Yes.
What is it, and how has it affected your ability to achieve this amazing historic longevity?
So the credo is about 75 years old. It was written by the former head of the company, one of the brothers, before the company went public. And it is the most remarkable document because it was written before anybody talked about social responsibility of corporations and corporations having a mission and a purpose. And it is a wonderful, it is a way in which it's really our behavior code. And it's, you guys should all read it. It's real. So I've been at J&J for 5 years, so I've not been there my whole career. And of course, people would say, oh, yes, it's a piece of paper on the wall. It is not a piece of paper on the wall. It talks about our first responsibility is to the mothers, the fathers, the children, the doctors, the nurses, to do the right thing. It talks about our social responsibility for our workers, the communities in which we operate in, the environment. It talks about how we treat and work with our partners and our suppliers or vendors. And oh, by the way, if we do all of those things correctly and improve people's health every single day, and that's why we show up at work every day, the shareholder will get an appropriate return.
Yeah.
And it's a remarkable, and it is really how we think about choices we make every day, which businesses we're in, which ones we get out of, how we want to do things. Our long-term view, we take a very long-term view. Obviously, we wouldn't have the market cap we have today if we didn't hit our quarters.
Obviously, Wall Street thinks you have a long-term view.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't hit if we didn't hit our quarters, that wouldn't be our market cap. But it also enables us to think about not just today, but what we should be doing 10 years, 20 years from today to really change the trajectory of human health.
Well, it must be making a difference, and it's really a privilege to have you up here. So thanks so much, and look forward to continuing to hear all the great things you're doing.
Thank you, David. Thanks, everyone.